Like I have a lot of fond memories with National College. Although I stayed here for only for a year, the bondage that I had with this school or with this college has been more than anywhere else, because I always used to talk to H. Nasimaya, a very distinguished person, and I think this college has grown very well. So we always say college is a school in America, so sorry if I just say that college to school. So this college has grown tremendously after hearing from the principal the tradition of getting ranks and being at the helms of affairs for many occasions are very good. I also want to thank Professor Chauraya here, who's been professor at engineering college, and he has done a lot of good things. And we want to recognize, and also my brother Srinivas Murthy, I think he's somewhere sitting in the audience. So I think what is very critical at this point is I want to sort of give you an overview on the cyber security, and I will also tell you some of my own personal experiences of cyber security, because this is an area which has created revolution. So the question is, what can we really do in the context of cybersecurity? And I hope that I will be able to define this area. And apparently, this is an area of global importance. And there is this destruction from cybersecurity that is taking place is tremendous. And it is costing billions of dollars all around the world. So I would like to start and give you several more examples right away on that. So I will also tell you our university is located close to the ocean. I think if you can sort of visualize United States, the South Florida, the Miami, Florida is almost like Bangalore, because you will see a lot of coconut trees, a lot of mango trees, so the weather is identical to this, a very beautiful place. South Florida, Miami, is the most important city, is almost at the tip of United States. You'll see, this is where the United States, Miami is located. All of these coconut trees you can see. So the place where is a very beautiful place. So we have people from all over the world. Russia, so many places. And this is a place to do cybersecurity research, because this is where what I call as the infusion of ideas takes place. And I've been very fortunate. So if you look at it, just to give you an idea, so this is where the Atlantic Ocean is. So this is where our university is located. And we are located, almost about 20 miles to the ocean. Beautiful ocean, We never get any snow, and the weather is very beautiful most of the time, except it might get a little tropical in the summer, rains like what we have in Bangalore. So it's a very ideal place for some people. So a lot of people who are up north, who feel the cold and snow, they'll come down to settle their life in Florida. Beautiful place. I've been blessed, and I'm very privileged to get a job like this. Okay, so this is where we live close to the campus, 10, 15 miles, not that much, beautiful, very scenic, and you have everything. If you want to go to the beach and things like that, this is the place where we can do a lot of good things. So, I don't know how many of you remember the map of United States. So from Miami to Key West, that Key West is something similar to like Rameshwaram. Rameshwaram is in Tamil Nadu, right? So it's like that. It's almost to the tip end. So that's where all the Pacific and the Atlantic and the Gulf meets, the ocean. So that's something very similar to that. And now they have built a beautiful bridge from Miami to Key West, all around water. And it runs for miles and miles, and so beautiful. If you are really fond of looking at the sunset, this is the best place to see. And of course, you know that 30 miles from Miami is Cuba, so the Latin American countries are pretty much there. Okay, so what I really want to do, talk to you, is to give you an idea of what is cyber security. You know, what do we know about it? What have you understood? What are the kind of threats that we have? And so everything that I'm going to show you in this. But let me start with an example. I wrote a book called Mathematical Theories of Distributed Sensor Network. It just appeared 6 weeks back. Okay? So you can very well see, sometimes when they publish the book, this is being published by Springer Verlag publication company, if you've heard. That's a very decent publication. So somebody, you know, normally they put the title of the book, the authors, and you can see here, somebody has already hacked to this. So they changed my name to my secretary's name. So when my student was looking at this book on the internet, so he said, "Sir, I mean, your name has disappeared from the book." I don't think it has disappeared from the book, but it has disappeared on the web page, on the internet. So then we had to go and tell the Springer Verlag publication company and tell them, so they fixed it. So what is the essence of this is, there is a provision now on the internet, anything can be hacked. So here is a simple example, people can, you know, sort of visualize on that. That's why I brought this book to show you. This is not fun because, you know, there are a lot of good programmers. So the people who hack the system, they're very smart people. They know how to predict your password. They know how to get onto your internet. So there's a lot of theft on the transactions on banks. And there's also a lot of theft, you know, on many of the places where you do the ATM transactions. I mean, it is all done by what we call as hackers, or people, I would call them as terrorists, who get into the personal assets of other people. So here is a good example of that. So the question is, what is the seriousness of the cyber threat? So if you look at this figure, now we are going through a cyber warfare now, because recently the Department of Defense, they had a news bulletin. They said cyber warfare is the most serious threats facing the United States. That's a very important statement, because people are able to manipulate on the internet and have been able to access information by these programmers, or what we call as hackers. So that's one example. Now, the Department of Defense, they also have a lot of hackers. So the question is, how do you develop anti-hacking threats? That means if somebody is trying to get into your credit card number, how do you develop the sort of, you know, prevention for this thing in the scheme? How do you develop a coding scheme? So there is this constant work that is being going on in every agency in the United States. You know that Edward Snowden, I don't know how many of you are following the news, he came out of the country and he leaked a lot of news. You know, some good, some bad, but I'm not here to judge on that. But he should not have done that, because he was working in the United Nations States National Security Agency. He had access to all of these classified documents. So he came up with all of those things and ran to, you know, some countries and finally sort of settled in Russia, because Russia wanted to know what he's trying to do. They want to study his mind. So they sort of give him a visa and his presently is there. But the moment he comes to the United States, he'll be put in jail or whatever that takes place. This won't happen. But so he was one of those guys who was working in the National Security Agency. So if you sort of take a look at it, there are 5 dimensions we are looking at it, because first we are talking about the space, the time. Then we are also looking into the concept of threat, what we call as intellectual threat. Like China is very good in that, in copying. So anything that you sort of send, a proposal or something, they can copy it and do a little modification. So that's also a sort of a cyber threat. And then, suppose for some reason I don't like Department of Defense, then I can create certain worms in my program and block the entire operation of your defense. Because the defense is always collecting a lot of information in a big data. I mean, they collect information about the weather, they collect information, they collect all sorts of intelligent information, but you can creatively hack them by creating what are called as black holes and black worms. We'll talk about it. Now, so the 5th dimension is creating those worms, and this is what we call as virus. Virus is a very elementary thing, like you know that when you sort of log into your computer, automatically you see that there are so many advertisements coming, because the people who are advertising their good programs. So they'll have some sort of an arrangement with the person who is, sort of using the system, and they'll put all of these advertisements. So like that, there are many, some good and some bad also. So what we are talking is a cyber war. So the cyber war is a very interesting war. So according to the Delhi Major General, he says the cyber war will be the biggest revolution in the warfare. The traditional war is almost gone. And is almost sort of unheard of in years to come, because through the cyber war, I will be exactly know your positions of the, and the trajectory of all your soldiers. I know what positions they are in. And then there are what we call as drones. I can drop bombs. But even in a very difficult terrain like Afghanistan, that has become a very, difficult task, because there are some times, even though there are these drones attacks are there continuously, but there are some, people, innocent people also will get kept. So there is not a perfect system. But we are in the cyber war. So the cyber war is not going to be very good in years to come. So every country started putting a lot of efforts into this cyber war. Now, a typical cyber attacks can trigger many catastrophic events and a larger incidence of, a disastrous things to any country. Okay? Now, give you an example. So I can send a fake information on your internet telling that the Pakistanis have already occupied half of India. True or not, it doesn't matter. So the people, when they see that kind of information on the internet, they will essentially become very panicked. And when that happens, you know what it is? The whole country will go into chaos. So a very interesting question that we should ask is, what kind of software tools that we can produce to prevent these things happening? Now, so there is a large amount of research that what we are trying to do in universities and in major companies, and I'll give you some examples as we go along with that. So this cyber attack, as what we talk about it, it does not depend on where you are. You may be here in Bangalore, or I may be here in Miami, or Washington, or Paris. It doesn't matter, because geographically the communication networks, what we have through the signals, can capture and you can hack any system that you want. And you have seen that it is happening even in the United States, because they do have an anti, cyber attacks on many of these things, but still they can sort of go through the system and sort of make the system ineffective through these cyber attacks. So this is the basic motivation and why we have to study the cyber attacks and the cyber security. So now, because of the cyber security problems, every university in the country is starting a program, a master's program we have in cyber security. We are going to start. And like that, every university has courses of creating or learning how to make students to learn to be very security efficient in terms of these programs. So this is a very interesting motivation that we can sort of use for this. Now, before we have a solution, we should be able to predict all of these catastrophic events, and that's the biggest challenge, because you have seen case after case that these kind of attacks have killed people, a lot of innocent people, and a lot of failures. So the question is, can you develop a fault-tolerant system? So the United States has already spent enormous amount of money on what we call as next generations of internet. So that in the next generations of internet, there are a lot of security things that has been embedded, and it is being used to prevent some of it but not all of it. So it is very important that we know that these things ahead of time. So look, for example, the World Trade Centers. We have failed in that World Trade Centers. Why? Because we had lots of information from Al-Qaeda, because the people who were flying those planes, they were already in the United States. They were training, they were trained. How did that happen? Because there was not much of communication between the immigration office and the other office. So that means there was a breakdown in the communication network. So Al-Qaeda will be able to sort of use that, and you know what happened on those two World Trade Centers. A calamity of such magnitude, of so many innocent people got killed, the country has gone into this kind of things. So these are the kinds of things. Now there are a lot of security things are also being used, which I will talk to you in a couple of minutes. So what is the next? So what do we have to do? And so I would suggest that in every universities and colleges, we must train the next generation of scientists and engineers in the area of cyber security. Because we must tell them, we must at least teach them what are the problems, how do we rectify. So, you know, so strategically speaking, we must change our curriculum. So now the focus in the United States, as I was talking to a few friends a few minutes back, we wrote a $6 million proposal essentially to come up with creating a center of excellence in cybersecurity. And one of the goals is to foster and integrate research into education by means of all of these in the area of cybersecurity and the economy. So that should be one of the things that every university around the world are doing. Now, cybersecurity centers should be established. Now, small or big, it doesn't matter, you know, because the idea is you don't need a lot of infrastructure for this. All that you need is a lab space with some workstations, and people will know how to program and do certain things. And that should be the springboard for the students, because students are quite smart. Because many of the hackers that you see, they come from undergraduate program. So the question is, how do you sort of, you know, mentor them and provide and create it? Now, the third phase of it is, you know, before an attack that happens in cybersecurity, we must be able to understand, you know, see the kind of attacks that we are getting, or the, you know, the country is getting, so much ahead of time. So that means we must have a real-time solution for many of these kind of problems. Now, so you know that, especially in the United States, you know, although we do have hydroelectric power plants, a lot of power generation comes from nuclear reactors. Okay, power grids, smart grids. And you know what has happened with smart grids? Smart grids has been a failure, because one can sort of introduce an attack and make sure that the load distribution of the energy that you have on the smart grid is very uneven. You can make certain area, region completely dark and put the excessive. So the smart grids they do have sophisticated computational schemes in such a way to do a very beautiful power distribution along the side. And that's how we need to do that. So one good example that you can see is, these kind of grids at the nuclear reactors are very important. And I'll give you a very specific example what happened with the nuclear reactor development in Iran. So these are all what we call as challenges ahead of time. So we don't know 10 years from now what is that going to happen in years to come. So the information security as applied to computers and networks, that's what we used to think. Not anymore. Because the cyber security is not just for the computers and the network. So that's what I call as information technology security. Like suppose if somebody is trying to jam your signal, that's okay because we can avoid that. But what we are really talking is, we must be, sorry. So we must be protected from unintended or unauthorized access or destruction. And that's very, very important. So the detection of a cyber threat, identification, and the prediction, those are the three components which are very, very important. So let's give you a few more ideas. Like I gave you an example of the book which I showed you. Now, theft of intellectual property. You know that every institutions have so many bright people, and there are so many new ideas are coming. In fact, I just, last Saturday, I went to a senator's house in Jayanagar, and he was telling me a very beautiful idea, which I think he has applied a patent, so I think I can speak. Some of these gas cylinders that you buy, you probably do not know when it is going to get emptied. You may be in the office or you may be somewhere else. So if there is a way that we can detect it's almost getting emptied or something like that, how do you do that? Here's some of the methods. I don't want to go into his method, but there's a very nice idea that he has used, and that can be sort of used for detection of energy in the solar panel if there is something leaking, or in your water tank. So he has a very generic application. So that can be stolen at any instant of time if he does not have a sort of patent on that. So that's why it's very, very critical to have a patent submitted and acquiring a patent, and that can be used for the entrepreneurship later on in the university. So that's what I call as theft of intellectual property. So these things happen very commonly in universities. Suppose when you send some information to some place in China or anywhere else, they can take their ideas and produce on their own, and it is happening. And so that's one of the, what I call as cyber threats. Then attack on national infrastructure. Now, for example, if we know what is an important area which has all the basic weapons located, and the United States has the capability to do that. But people can certainly take advantage of the situation and attack on that information structure. So what do I mean by attack? So you sort of understand how the infrastructure works, because most of it is all computer related, so you can sort of introduce certain worms in the software and completely destroy all the things they've saved. Of course, there are a lot of backups and all those things, but that's not that common, but there are certain classified information also. So that's another example of the national information structure. Museums. Nowadays, the authenticity of the real paintings are gone. Because when you go to a museum, you can take a picture and you can duplicate it. So that's another cyber crime one can create, and people are making lots of dollars based on that. Now, there is what is called as denial of service attacks. Now, remember, my expertise is in the area of sensor networks. So one of the things that we normally do in the area of sensor networks, suppose let's assume I have a drinking water facility somewhere close by. Somebody who did not like our country, our state, or our city, he can put some cyanide into that water drinking facility. And it's quite easy. So then, once we know that there is a poisonous element in the water, so the question is, how do you detect it? So I did some work for Oak Ridge National Laboratory. One of the interesting examples were, if you are carrying a very important information on the sea port, you can actually introduce some cyanide into the water or some destructive agent and make the whole thing inactive. So the question is, we were able to sort of detect by using sensors. Now these are very small sensors, and that can be sort of deployed anywhere, and those sensors has an ability to capture. These are biochemical sensors, biological sensors. It can sort of read and understand the enzymes in the water and send it on to the internet. So we did that. So our intention when we were doing that work in a national lab, that's a nuclear lab. So we wanted to prevent and make sure that there is no radiation leak, because that's what it happens most of the time. So when there is a radiation leak, the easiest way to do that is by sort of deploying these sensors and detecting those, enzymes and understand what is the leakage there. But now we have lots of other applications. So there are surface effects. So the denial of service attacks can come there by introducing certain worms or certain types of what I call as misrepresentation. So if my data is being aggregated from one cluster to the other cluster and trying to put all that information in the base station, then I can turn that into a different deviation and make the whole system disabled. You understand? So that is one example. The other example that I can also do is I can flood the system. I can put a lot of unnecessary information in the network and make the system very inactive, and the whole system is pretty much gone. So that's another interesting thing that we do. So there are a lot of nice mathematical structures we have built, mathematical foundations we have in many of the work. So that's another interesting of denial of service attacks. Now, of course, I will also go into TCP/IP attacks on the internet. That's quite common. I think some of you may have explained on that. Then there's the idea of sniffing. That's also very important, because if suppose I am trying to send some information to Professor Chaudhaya, a very confidential information, that somebody in the middle can sort of look what information I am sending. They can sniff it by using certain very sophisticated software, and then completely, if suppose I have sent a report that this student should be passed in the evaluation of the PhD thesis, then all around them they can come back and say he should be failed. So all these things can happen in many of these applications. And there are some protocols that I can sort of change in the process. So who are all the people at risk? Now, as I already said, telecommunications. And that department is at fully risk in many of these things. Banking institution. You know that the banking institutions, they work only by computers. So normally one of the major problems that we have seen, especially at the JP Morgan Chase Bank, is visa fraud. The moment somebody knows your number, he can create and get all the money, or he can get maybe $10 every month or every transactions that you do, because you don't normally notice that, right? So like that for one customer, and assume that if there are 1 million customers, look at the amount of money they are generating. Now the other interesting thing on the banking transactions, insider trading. I hope you know some of these insider trading. So normally what happens in many of the stocks company, they'll always be sort of looking around which stocks will be sold at what price. And they will have that information much ahead of time, maybe 2 or 3 hours. So you can send that information to somebody who is buying it. Okay, don't buy it now. In the next 2 hours you go and buy it. You're going to get 2% less. So you can save a lot of money on the insider trading. And a lot of people have been caught also. So I am talking about the problems that can be involved. Now the defense is very important because the defense is always collecting lots of information. So one of the things that I can do when they are collecting information is mislead them. By misleading I mean is giving wrong information. When you give the wrong information, any amount of your data mining and all the things that you do is absolutely meaningless. Okay? So that's one example. The government, see, United States I think is very good because we do get what is called as social security benefits. Now the social security benefits is very good. They don't ask you to fill in the applications and all. You can sort of do it online, then call you and then all of these things like that. But you can certainly mislead and give wrong information, and then a lot of transactions can go bad there also. I mean, they might get caught, eventually they might be caught, but a lot of money being spent on many of those things. Energy sector. Now, energy sector, there also is something very similar, tapping all your resources of energy unauthorized. I mean, here it happens in small scale, and that can happen in large scale too. So that's another important, side of it, because most of it is all, see, one of the things we have recently developed called smart meters. Smart meters essentially will tell you overall how much amount of energy they have used, what time, and it predicts an average how much they're using, and if there is any deviation. So they do a lot of this artificial intelligence embedded smart meters, and they can certainly make use of those kinds of things. So that's another way you can sort of introduce a cyber threat in the context of using smart meters. Internet service providers, like most of you know, internet end users, and computers cable, you can always tap all of these signals from different places. Now, theft of intellectual property that I've already said, like any innovation, commercial or artistic, or any formula with economic value, any unique name, symbol, logo that is used commercially, or even if you have a patent, he can modify your patent and get the idea what he wants. Copyright in the store, the trademark, trade secrets. All of those things are what we call as theft of intellectual property. See, I am on the committee of the International Conference on Computer Security. Last year I gave a talk in New York, and we talked about all these things. What should we do to prevent many of these kind of things? So, the crime. What is the crime involved here? Stealing the intellectual property. Taking somebody's ideas and develop that into a product. And that has become a very growing threat, especially in digital technology. Okay? And also on the internet. So, the Chinese IP theft is a fundamental problem. I hope there are no Chinese here, but the real truth is, the Chinese, the moment they know they can really take and hack and do a lot of things here, and that's really costing United States is about $300 billion a year. So you can very well imagine the amount of money that is being stolen from the United States is that much because of these IP issues. So how to prevent it? So the prevention, okay, so there are some standard methods. One is performing auditing and mapping, keeping the network up to date, because you also want to know who is using it, what kind of emails that you are getting, so that kind of a thing. Then the physical system. You must keep the physical system very secured in the network. The server, the communication exchange and all of those things. And the medium access control address, that must be filtered. Because I think, if you take a look at the architecture of a sensor network, you have a physical address, a MAC address, then you have a communication address, then the application. So you have to be very careful in how you sort of keep the IP addresses very careful and monitor that. Then implementing the virtual large-scale integration, we learn to segregate the traffic. Because one of the problems we face on the internet is the traffic. Traffic means, I'm talking about the data, the information traffic. So how do you sort of operate on that? How do you segment the data? How do you sort of partition the data for a different user? That's a very challenging problem, although there are some solutions. So the next and the interesting idea is how do you sort of come up with cryptographic schemes? It is like, you suppose I'm giving a talk, then you don't need to say Professor Iyengar is giving a talk. In a code language, X, Y, Z is giving a talk. So you need to sort of create, that kind of technology, the cryptographic schemes. That is science by itself. It's highly mathematical, and what kind of techniques that you sort of do that. Now, encrypting the entire network is something very, very important. Because sometimes, if your network is completely crypted, and somebody knows the structure and the information, then you're gone. So in that particular case, you should be able to sort of encrypt that. Now here are some examples of attack on national infrastructure systems. Now, an example is StuckNet 1. Now this purpose was attack an industrial programmable logic controller that used to control the machinery or factory and assembly lines separating nuclear materials. So there are a lot of things you have to do a separation process for a nuclear material, so you can sort of, hack the programmable logic controller. Now, this has been discovered in June of 2012. This is the largest and the costliest development effort in malware history. Now, this is very, very important, especially for nuclear industries. And you know how difficult it can be. I know that because I worked, for some time in the IG card as a Hoki Baba professor. For a short time, I could understand the complexity, involved in that. So on the StuckNet 1, the real example was, the target was Iran's nuclear facilities. Reportedly ruined almost 1/5 of nuclear centrifuges. You understand the magnitude of that? Now the function is, you target the machines, you collect information, cause a fast spinning centrifuge to take themselves apart. That's your algorithm. And that algorithm can destroy the whole thing. So this is what we call as StuckNet 1. So you can demolish the information structure by using this. I mean, this is all available on the internet or anywhere else, Google. So denial of service attacks, I think I already gave a little bit of an idea. So what is very interesting here is making a network service unusable. That's all. Whatever way you want to do, you make sure that the network is not usable. So when that happens, so how do you do it? There are many methods. Overload the server. When you overload a server, what happens? The server is not responding. When that happens, it's gone. So how do you overload the server? So you flood the traffic. Too much of information, unwanted information. It can drown out all the other communications. Then oversize or malform IC packets cost. Because whenever you have communication, you have the packet sizes are well defined. Increase the packet size, then it can doom the system. So the servers can be sort of mishandled in that also. Then by the time you sort of reboot and crash it, it's gone. So distribution of denial of service attacks also can be done, because you can create as if it is causing all over the network, not at just one particular place. So these are the standard examples of the denial of service attacks. Now, then there is also denial of service countermeasures. How do you sort of rectify this? So now, one of the questions that I said is, stop the attack before it happens. So this is what we call as hardening the TCP/IP. So that means you need to sort of really come up with some very good authenticated mechanism to see that nobody can attack that. So that's again is in the hands of a good programmer. Then IP addresses, you need to filter it, because when you have a big network, there are different people using and different functionalities with different IP addresses. So how is that? If the source IP of a packet comes in an interface which does not have a route to that packet, then drop it. Because in any network, as soon as you have the information routed, there's always a route that reaches the endpoint. You know, it is like a plane. If suppose a British Airways starts from Bangalore, to reach London, it has a routing table. It has to go by that only. It has a very good specifications, like 35,000 feet. It has to pass through a particular road. We call it as highway, a plane highway. So it has to be able to go in that direction before it reaches London. It cannot deviate. So when you are doing that, even in communication networks, you can increase the sizes of the packets. So when you increase the size of the packets, then it becomes overloaded, so you have to watch it. So when you rectify it and you see that there is an over packet size, then you sort of delete it. So there is a lot of successful implementation on many of these things. Now, TCP/IP attacks on the internet, now these are very vulnerable applications, those which use as IP addresses authentication methods. So we normally and traditionally use the IP addresses as an authentication method. That's not good, because if you look at it, there are different, look at the attacks here. So you can make it a synchronized attack. So the attacker who is trying to attack this IP addresses is also a smart fellow. So we try to make everything synchronized, but he can make it unsynchronized and attack the system. So certainly this can be a major cause in that. So how does it work? You have a source function here on a TCP connection. This goes to each of the destination, that believing that the sending data is forming the IP trusted addresses. So we also create what are called as trusted IP addresses. The moment we think about the IP addresses, so possible solution is authentication layer. So what we can do is, we can create different levels of authentication before it. So then there is this transport layer on the network too. Now sniffing, as I already said, sniffing is a program that monitors and analyzes the network traffic. That's why it's called sniffer. So if it is used legitimately to capture all the data that is being sent, then we are safe. Then man in the attack can come in the middle, he can access the data and he can create his own sniff. So that means he can create a lot of unreliable actions or processes in the attack. So he can come in between an authorized user to host the real data. You see, all of those things are very simple and commonsensical things. So he can use a sniffer to gain more information before he can do a large-scale attack on the infrastructure. So how do you do the countermeasure here? Using the strong physical security, you do a lot of segmentation, then communication should be good, and the protocol that you design should be as accurate as possible. So unsecure applications and protocols. See, protocols play also a very significant role in the network communication. So it should be very efficient on that. So the last one I want to talk about is what is called as the firewalls. Now, the firewalls, essentially what it does is it limits the access of the application user, because everybody cannot access. If you go to one of the national labs, if I want to log in, I can't do that, even though I'm working there, because I put a little firewall, it hits and then it comes back. So So firewalls are usually used to prevent malware attacks on the internet, and it is done on the hardware, and you can build these firewalls on most of the operating systems, which are very common. So then what is the difference between physical and cyber security? Substantial increase in the number of internet users, unable to treat physical and cyber security. So now what has happened is the density of the traffic is so high, you can see this, how people are using the internet. So there is no physical and cyber systems, they are all one and the same. So physical security countermeasures, you only have to make authorized users. Then what are called as intrusion detections, you can keep some guards and monitoring, property protection, just like what we do in the physical security procedures, escort the visitors. I remember in 1992, when I was a scientist at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, even if I had to go to the bathroom, there's always two people used to escort me. So one day I asked him what happened. He didn't tell me, but he was very nice enough. And because they say that we always want to escort visitors. I'm a visiting professor there. And because security is very important. Because a lot of times, a lot of attacks, planning takes place in the laboratory and the laboratories in labs. So they want to escort wherever you go. So you have to be very careful. And then also, for example, I look a little different, so then probably they get more suspicious. Then they think, oh my God, he's coming here and taking all the information. So they always want to be very protected. So once I remember an incident that happened in some time back, myself and a student of mine were working at Oak Ridge National Lab after 5 o'clock. So after 5 o'clock, if I want to stay in the National Lab, I need to take the permission, which we did not. So within no time, there were a lot of guards came with a gun and said, what are you doing here? And then of course, I had to tell that I'm a scientist here and my director has to call the guards. But, so those are all the kind of physical restrictions that you have in many of these places. So let me address 3 salient questions to summarize my talk. So I would also give some solutions on these things. How is the security of cyber physical systems different from computer network or information security? The second question is, what are the most important issues in the security of physical systems? Then the third thing is, what are the research problems that we can give it to our students, undergraduates, if it can be solved? So let me answer one by one. So how is the security of physical systems? So we talk about one traditional security concerned with the intrusion and security systems. Then the cyber physical nature of the systems also important. Then there are sometimes wide linkages, wireless, so it depends on the hardware and software. And there are sometimes you can develop some similar systems to fool people who are trying to hack your system. The second question is, what are the most important issues in the security of cyber? So in the physical security, there are no perfect barriers against attackers. But attacks have a marginal cost to the attacker in the physical. So in computer security, in contrast, the perfect barrier can be constructed, but attacks have no marginal cost to the attacker. Once you have an attack, and which can be launched immediately with no cost. I can be sitting on the system and launch the attack. The last one is, what are the research problems? So we need a very good integrated approach to security, both at the cyber and physical aspects. And then we have to define what are called as embedded real-time operating systems. Now these are the systems with safety and security. Then self-healing and self-configuring networks. And so these requires not just a computer scientist. So the proposal which we wrote today, we had physicists, we had policy decision makers, we had computer scientists, a mathematician. So it is a multidisciplinary program, and that's where you need to be looking at creating the Center for Excellence. I think that sort of completes my talk, and exactly it's 7 o'clock. So if there are any questions, I would be happy to answer.